All right, let's look at some shimming that's going on in this piano. Some cracks in the top. I mean, we could see this crack, which turns out to be a few cracks. I'm treating it as a few cracks. You could treat it as one big one and gang these together and put one big shim in here, but I don't think that's necessary because of the fact that, well, even though the grain in here is a little awkward and some people would have you take a big shim wherever my big shim got to and just like make a big shim out of this, I don't feel it's necessary. So I'm going to treat these as little, I'm going to call them inconsequential cracks because overall the soundboard is strong. It's not, the cracks don't weaken the support which you need out of the soundboard. I don't think any of them, because they're not up off the ribs, they don't present a threat to making a buzz or making any sound that's bad. So this is almost a cosmetic exercise, I would say. All right, so I didn't put heat underneath it because I don't need to open these up. It is March and it was snowing yesterday. It's not snowing, but I mean the forced air heat is coming back on, and I don't know exactly how wet or dry it is, but it is winter, and the one thing you want to avoid is if it was summer and the soundboard was swollen, so to speak, and you put these shims in there. When you got to winter, it would surprise the shims, and as the soundboard was shrinking, they may crack again. Now, these may crack again anyway, but don't get me started. So, anyway, this is winter, which is what you're shooting for. In the dryness, you don't want the thing to crack open again. So, shimming in the winter is easier because you're not fighting that humidity. But what I did do, and I forgot my light. I'm not sure if it's going to show underneath here. Yeah, there they are. I did put several wedges in here, lightly tapped them under there, and not at all to support the clamping that's going on. What you would think, having these glue bars here, I'm pressing this shim down, you would think, well, you have to support the board underneath so that you don't damage the board. These really aren't glue bars. I call them glue twigs. There's barely any pressure because there's barely any force necessary to take a little piece of wood like this. And I mean, if I put this in here now, it almost sticks by itself. You barely need any pressure there at all. So that's not the reason for those wedges, which I have drawn another very awkward pictorial here of this is the state of the soundboard before shimming. It's not wedged, and that's supposed to be a crack. Don't get me started. So anyway, I I tapped some wedges in there, and I pushed the soundboard up a little bit in figure number 2, and now that crack is sort of starting to look like this. And then I'm going to use this tool, which is wedge shaped, to cut that open more. Drop the piece of wood in there, fit the wood in there carefully, remove the blocks in figure number 3, and then you see as the soundboard comes down, what I'm trying to show here is the soundboard is wanting to go back down to where it was. It's actually going to pinch in the top here, and it's going to help keep that shim tight, hopefully over time. That's the hope. Now, I mean, this is what, let's say you didn't start back to picture number 1. There's the soundboard. Let's say you just pushed down on the soundboard and it moved down a little bit, and you cut, there's the shim in there. And now when you let the pressure off of there and the soundboard moves back up, it's going to actually stretch out on the top there and try to crack that shim some more, which is arguably, I mean, you could say this is the way the soundboard's made. That's one of the reasons why these things crack. When you rib a soundboard, it is bending it up like that, and that's what causes a split to begin with, but we don't want it to split. So I don't know if you can follow any of this, but I make these videos so if I do get adult onset stupidity, I can remember what I used to do, and then start to go from there. So anyway, here's another rant about a lot of people use these machines, routers that track along a straight line and will cut a perfectly straight groove that you then take a shim, a perfectly straight shim, and drop it in there, and you're done. In some ways it's easier, in some ways it's harder, in that you can't, I'm sure you can't use that mechanism in here, in this confined space here. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure you can. But look at this situation here where the grain is not perfectly straight at all. Like it is, you know, there's a couple places along here that, I mean, it cracked along one grain, which wasn't perfectly straight. But when I use this tool to open it up, it will track along that one grain. And so you get something that's not perfectly straight. Well, my thinking is that there's no reason for this to be perfectly straight. I would rather, this shim, which is going to be much skinnier, like the other one that's done, it will follow that easily. Now what happens if you just cut a straight, if you just cut this straight? My contention is that there's a lot of wood in here that's fine. It's just curvy. It's just got a little bit of a curve to it. Why disturb that? Why would you, when you cut a straight line into a curved grain, and here's comes another really horrible picture, but here's the curved grain, here's my shim that curves along with it, and here's this one that just sort of cuts right through the landowner's property with it. Complete disregard. No, let's not go there. Anyway, what happens is these little area right here is called run out. The grain is running out. It's coming there and stopping. And this one is stopping because you cut it. Now in the future, as this thing is expanding and contracting, the wood is expanding this way in the summer and the other way. It's more probable that a crack is going to start right here and open up along here. As this thing expands and contracts, or you know, if you can imagine that, it's a contiguous. I worked that word in there. It's a continuous or contiguous, whatever that means. I think there's less stress. I don't like this, and I like this, so I'm going to stick with it. I don't like explaining things. Obviously, I'm not very good at it. That's kind of just an intuitive thing for me. You feel free to argue all you want. To me, it'd be perfectly fine leaving this crack alone, but let's shim it. So, all right. What else? I just want to touch quickly on something. I'm a hide glue fanatic on soundboards, but this is one place where I'm not going to bother. Don't tell anybody, but this. There's no reversibility needed in this. Oh, stop it. All right. Well, this thing has been glued together for a while. I'll put these back on. Well, just pretend you didn't see that. But anyway, you can see that, I mean, this thing is not going to jump out of there because the clamps fell off. So I'm just going to stick them back on, and we'll pretend that didn't happen. It's been there for 10 minutes or so anyway. You could probably leave that alone. It's not going to come flying out of there. So I think that's all I was going to show anyway. So I can go repair this. And like I said, a lot of people would make a big giant thing out of this. And since it's glued down to the rib, I'm just going to make another little shim right next to that one. And we're done. I probably left out a lot of stuff. Yeah, the non-hide glue stuff. Don't tell anybody that I'm not a purist. And then later on, you know, I love doing this because there's a good chance for me to sharpen this chisel up nicely. So after I put these in, I'll just run this this is a flat crane neck chisel, run it right along there. And I have over the years tried to stain these to match These are Eastern spruce also instead of Sitka, so they're less yellow. Don't tell anybody that they're also not Sitka spruce. They're Eastern. I don't think it's going to affect the sound, and my lawyers will talk to you if you feel like it's going to change the sound, but anyway, there it is.